It is July 23rd, and that means it's time for another edition with Kyle Reis here on Wednesday with Walton and Reis at thecardinalnation.com in video form and in audio form at the Scoops Sports Network and all your favorite podcast apps. Hello again, Kyle.
Hello again, Brian. How are you?
Doing great, doing great. So, we're going to talk this week about some transactions that occurred, a lot of moves on the pitching front. And then, of course, we'll get into the draft. And as everyone probably knows who's watching this podcast, the Cardinals have signed all 21 players they drafted, as well as two undrafted free agents. So the draft is wrapped up, and now it's a matter of getting players, get their physical exams, determine which ones are going to be ready to play and at what levels. And but we're going to talk the majority of the time in our call today, in our podcast today, about where we would rank these 23 new individuals, or which of the 23 individuals we would rank in the top 50 prospects. And Kyle and I have a very different view of that. So we're going to compare and contrast and talk about that. So hopefully everybody will enjoy today's edition. It'll last as long as it lasts. Last week, we had an extra long list with an extra long podcast with our guest Kareem Hawk, but it was very well received. And I really enjoyed what the two of them had to say about the Cardinals draft. So I hope you enjoyed today as well.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into some of these prospects, Brian.
So before we get into prospects, the Cardinals were adding depth at the AAA level, and some folks read into this that it means starting pitchers will be traded. I know at least Kyle hopes that that's the case. Not mentioning any names or anybody who's pitching on Tuesday night, but the Cardinals picked up Aaron Wilkerson, who is basically a fringe major leaguer, hadn't been in the major leagues for quite a while, 36 years old, AAA depth. Hasn't started yet for Memphis, but probably will at some point. And one could argue that he's going to step into the Memphis rotation for Michael McGreevy, who's called up. And at least if Oliver Marmol has his way, McGreevy is going to stay with St. Louis in some aspect so far. What's your take on those two transactions, Kyle?
Yeah, I'm happy for McGreevy, and I hope he sticks around. There's no reason for him not to stick around, regardless of what you think you're going to get for Eric Fetty or what role Miles Michaelis will play, because it doesn't sound like he's going to waive his no trade clause, even if they do find a buyer or a taker for him. So yeah, McGreevy for me, I would hate to see that kid go back down to AAA. It seems pointless. It also seems like the team is an open revolt against it. The Cardinals are an open revolt against it with some of the comments and the post game last night.
And and to his credit, McGreevy pitched in a tough ballpark to pitch in. Granted, it's okay. It's Colorado Rockies. They're not a good team this year, but the fact is, it's a tough place to park, but tough place to pitch. And he came in and performed credibly in that environment. And you got to give him credit, because he was under a lot of pressure. If he'd have stunk like he did in his last two outings in Memphis, it could have been easy for them to send him down. But he made it a tough decision on them, and that's all you can ask him to do.
Yeah, and he did it by changing himself a little bit. His best, in my opinion, his best pitch is his sweeper. He gets the best results with it, and I think when he pairs it really well with the cutter, that's when he's at his best. We saw him kind of go away from that in the minors those last two rough starts. In Colorado on Monday night, he went fastball sinker heavy and lived on the fringes. And I thought that was again, Pedro Paez deserves a ton of credit for that. McGreevy deserves a ton of credit for that. But he kind of went away, made his sweeper his third pitch, his cutter his fifth offering, threw his curveball just a little bit more than the cutter. And he just said, you know what? Instead of worrying about the altitude, hanging my breaking pitch, I'm just going to try to pitch with command. And it was enough to limit the damage and change himself a little bit, which is a pitcher pitching. And we talk about that a lot. And I just thought it was really impressive and a note worth mentioning.
And in addition to Wilkerson joining Memphis, Max Rajcic, who had made 40 career starts at AA, certainly was at the point in time which he deserves a shot with Memphis, which he did. It was called up over the break and made his first start at AAA as well. It's going to give Memphis some rotation depth. Of course, Tekoa Roby's out, as I think we discussed that last week, and there's no indication of how soon that's going to be. Ian Bedell, I guess, is starting a rehab, so maybe Memphis will get a little bit more depth because their pitching staff has been decimated all year long.
Yeah, and Quinn Matthews is only lasting 3 innings with some shaky fastball command and diminished
Yeah,
velocity.
still a lot more walks than you want to see from him. You got to wonder if something's not right.
Yeah, Brian, when we get into my prospect rankings, your prospect rankings, I was going to talk about that a little bit more, so I'll hold off. But yeah, I think that really Aaron Wilkinson just joined Zach Plesac is older
I hope
punching.
he can pitch better than Zach Plesac has because we're talking about double-digit ERA.
Yeah, older punching bags that are going to be, I'm worried about Wilkerson. He's done a really good job of lucking into like a 4.17 ERA at AAA, even though he still has a really high home run rate. But yeah, like these are just minor league depth. This gives them a little bit more room that if they want to cut bait with somebody, they can cut bait. That's all that is. Again, Brian, you draw the line with minor league injuries, minor league pitching injuries, in major league uncertainty. And these are the kind of guys that you probably need to get yourself through a AAA season.
What do you expect for Rajcic at Triple? He's a guy that you have ranked, but you're not, super duper high on.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride for me with Max Rajcic. I feel like what I watch at Double A is a pitcher who would do better to attack, and he's at his best when he attacks. But I think that the danger when you have fringy stuff, other than like a changeup that's good against lefties and a curveball that's nasty, a fastball that's kind of average and middling, I think that you lend yourself maybe to AAA success or a continuation of the success you've had in your second turn at AA, but not much more. Again, he's changing things. We're starting to see the data from AAA, which is a little bit more encouraging than maybe where I ranked him. But I just this is he doesn't do anything other than a curveball that is spectacular enough to be sixth, seventh, eighth starter at the major leagues. Maybe a Drew Rom type. Not obviously two different pitchers that do two different things from two different sides of the body. But I just think that like that's what you're talking about it as
But
kind of
their
a ceiling.
but their last names start with the same letter.
I'm very slick about this. I'm
Uh,
very slick. That's what I'm going for.
replacing Rajcic is another interesting promotion at Springfield, and that is Cade Winquest coming up from Peoria. And you like Winquest a little better as a prospect than Rajcic.
Yeah, that's about the strikeout stuff, and that's going to be a theme with me when we get into the prospect, when we really get into it a little bit more than what we're talking about now. Is there's real strikeout stuff here. This is high velocity with a couple of secondary pitches that can get swing and misses, along with a fastball that can get swing and miss. With Winquest, I remember earlier in the year when we kind of highlighted him, when we spent a little extra time just talking about Cade Winquest, it was, man, this kid, if he would just, again, just like with Rajcic, but with better stuff, go in attack mode. He doesn't need to be cute with the zone, especially not at high A. He'll need to adjust his command at double A. It's a big jump. But at single A, he didn't need to be cute with his stuff. He just needed to throw it over the middle of the plate, and one out of every 25 hitters he's going to see was going to do something against it, and everybody else is just going to either swing and miss or solicit weak contact. And so what we saw over the last month, in particular, his last couple starts, is he just did that. He was just doing that, and his strikeout rate went up, hits per nine went down, and it looked like the potential to be more, whether it be out of a bullpen in a long term or something else. So
Well,
yeah, good for him.
Double A is it's a big place for pitchers. It's a big step. So we'll see how Cade Winquest does at Springfield. The two starter backfills at Peoria because in addition to losing Winquest, Zenwei Lin or Chenwei Lin, depending on how you want to pronounce it, went on the injured list, which is disappointment, continuation of basically a lost season for him. But Braden Davis and Brant Thompson, who are the two lead guys in the Palm Beach rotation, deservedly got a chance to move up. Again, guys that you're not really seeing yet as major league prospects.
Yeah, Braden Davis, I'm definitely a little bit higher on. But my thing with Brant Thompson, and I'm bad about this, Brian, is like he reminds me of Alex Fagalde. And he's just like this crafty. Now his breaking stuff is probably better than what Fagalde was, but he's a crafty command first pitcher that has somewhat diminished velocity, but some interesting pitch characteristics and release traits. So I'm not really on Brant Thompson as anything more than minor league relief. And I say that on Tuesday night in his debut, he pitched magnificently in 4 or 5 innings, struck out 7. So again, I'll be anxious to watch those K numbers, watch how his breaking pitch is being sat on. He hung a couple and he got away with it. But it was a really good start. And it was a really good thing. I do like Braden Davis. And, his mechanics get out of sync. And that's why you'll see the 6 walk starts or
Over the
5
top, kind of an over the top lefty.
Exactly. What happens is when he lands, sometimes he doesn't follow through with the rest of his body, and that causes his hand to delay when he releases, and that really messes up his mechanics. But the way that he drives it lends itself to this. So they've kind of worked on that. You can see that he's back on balance. And I think his former OU alum, we're going to see that again with Cade Crossland, the new fourth round pick for the Cardinals. I think we'll start to see something similar with him, where they start to streamline his mechanics. But I love the change up fastball combo with Braden Davis when he is commanding his stuff.
All right. So Kyle's been teasing the draft. Let's switch gears and talk about the draft. As I mentioned before, the Cardinals have signed all their picks. I think looking back at this draft, as we discussed in detail last week, the major change from prior years was the high focus on high velocity, big strikeout pitching. And the organizations received pretty good feedback about that, about their draft. Baseball America had 5 picks in their top Cardinals 25, for example. So, it's generally considered to be a pretty good draft. But once the dollar amounts of the signings became available, it showed that something very different happened this year. And I've written about this in detail at the Cardinal Nation for those who choose to subscribe. And that is that for at least the last 12 years, and probably longer, through the last 3 scouting directors at least, the Cardinals have always spent over 100% of their draft pool allocation, because teams can spend up to 105% before losing any draft picks or anything serious. And that provides a team a little additional leverage to either overpay some of the guys on day 2 of the draft and in the 11th through 20th round, or to maybe stretch a little harder on guys early in the draft who might take a few more dollars to sign, or as the Cardinals have done the last few years, take a pick in the late rounds, a high schooler that's ironclad commitment to college, and say, hey, what if we throw another $500,000 or $1 million at this kid? Will he change his mind and not go to Villanova or to Southern Cal or wherever? And the Cardinals didn't do any of that this year. They stayed right under their 100% allocation. Now, that was a record bonus. That was a record bonus amount. But part of the reason it was a record bonus amount was they drafted 5th overall. And the earlier you draft, the more money you get. And the first round pick is the vast majority of your bonus pool. So on one hand, the Cardinals spent more money than ever. They got all their guys signed. But on the other hand, they could have spent another $750,000 in this draft and still stayed under the 105% limit. And something inside of me says, I wish they would have really gone for it. And again, maybe they got the guys they wanted. Maybe everything's going to be great. As you'll see soon, Kyle's ranked 13 of these 21 players drafted in his personal top 50. So I'm not saying it's a bad draft. I'm just saying when the Cardinals are trying to invest in player development's their number one thing. How do they get the players to put into player development for them to become major leaguers? It's through scouting in the draft. And why wouldn't you spend every dollar that you can in the draft to try to get all the best players you can possibly get? And so
Right.
I'm second guessing a little bit here, but $750,000 is a lot of money.
It blindsided me. I knew that they were going to end up having to go above slot on Cade Crossland and Ethan Young. That was a little bit of information that I had gotten. And of course, Ryan Franklin Mitchell, Ryan Mitchell, we knew that he was going to get more because the prep 55th overall. So it kind of, when I found out that they were $750,000 under, I couldn't process it, especially with all of the years of going over. And I'm still struggling with it, Brian. I don't know how to interpret it. I guess the Cardinals apologist in me is like, oh, they were willing to pay Liam Doyle slot, but they got him down lower and then thought, oh, maybe we could. And
They
it
got
didn't
him
happen.
almost 900. Pardon me for interrupting, Kyle. They got
Yeah,
him for almost $900,000 under slot. And basically,
exactly.
the money they saved on Doyle, they used on overages for Mitchell and Crossland and Young and the other guys. So they didn't have to go over 100% to
Yeah.
get these guys. But who's to say that they couldn't have reached harder in the competitive B round or in the 3rd round or the 8th round,
Yeah.
and get another talent that maybe it would have taken a few more dollars to convince to sign.
Yeah. Well, I
You'll
mean,
never
even like,
know.
yeah, they've been reserving that 6th and 7th round pick for someone like Andrew Dukanich or Alec Willis in the past, where they do have to go. Even I think they even did it with Jason Savicol. I might have got that mixed up. I know Max Rajcic, who was a 6th round pick, he went over slot by a great degree, and I thought for sure Peyton Graham was going to be one of those guys, and it wouldn't have been an additional 700K. I thought he might get an extra 400K, but he signed for slot too.
Right, and,
The
and just a reminder to everybody, who Kyle's talking about Peyton Graham, 7th rounder, just like Dukanich last year, Tommy John guy. So less leverage, but Dukanich, like Graham, really didn't have a big track record built up in college. And one side of the argument says, hey, I go back to college and put up a good season. Maybe I can bump myself up into the third round or the second round.
Yeah, and you usually have to pay for that, especially when you're talking about a guy coming back from Tommy John with big stuff. So, and part of me thinks that maybe it just worked out this way. But of
Yeah,
course,
but the other side, Kyle, again, pardon me for interrupting. The other side
I love
is
it.
they when the Cardinals or any team goes into the draft, they know how much it's going to take to sign these guys before they call their name.
Yeah,
Right? They talked to Peyton Graham and his agent and said, "Hey, is what's your guy looking for to sign? I'm thinking about taking him in the seventh, eighth round. Is he willing to sign for slot?" And if they say no, he wants a half a million more, they move on to the next guy. So I don't think the draft surprised the Cardinals. I think it was their plan. They came in at 99.7%. That's not an accident.
yeah, yeah. Boy,
Especially when the last 12 years in a row, they came in averaging 103.5.
yeah, crazy, Brian. I mean, it's just crazy. It just feels like changing times, right? It'll be an interesting thing to watch next year. My eye will be peeled on what percentage of their draft pool they spend on next year. Because they're going to be picking from outside of the top 10,
Right.
and
And
we'll
they
see what
won't
happens.
they won't get 14 million again. But
Yeah,
last year, I mean, they lost $2.5 million because they signed Sonny Gray. So,
yeah,
they would have had like $13 million last year, but they forfeited their second round pick in each of the last 2 years. At least they didn't do that to themselves this go around. And granted, Sonny Gray and Wilson Contreras are two of the cornerstones of the team, but you also cost yourself not only two second round talents, but over the last 2 years, a little less than $4 million of money that could have been spent on the draft. So, the Cardinals at those two junctures prioritized winning now over the future.
yeah. God, that's so interesting. Another thing that I wonder, and again, I'm looking for things. A couple years back, and I don't remember what the guy's name was, but like in the 10th round, the Cardinals drafted a player who they knew how much it was going to cost him to sign him, and then at the last minute, he went back to college. And if you have to be really careful about your draft pool too, because if something like that happens, then you don't get that money allocated. Now, again, that's 100, or it was a ninth round pick or something like that. I can't remember, but you have to be really careful too, because there is a chance that you know Peyton Graham at the last minute, you feel like you've got it signed and you feel like you're agreed to a slot bonus, and he says no. Well, that's 200K you don't have to play with. Maybe in the back of their heads they're thinking, well, maybe Liam Doyle at the last minute is going to say, I want an extra million. Like, actually, you know what? I want an extra million. So maybe there was some worry there, playing it a little extra conservative. But other than
And
that,
and
it's
what
just
Kyle's referring to is Caden Kendall, who was a 10th round pick in 2023. They called his name. He didn't sign, and so the Cardinals lost about $166,000 of draft money. They couldn't take that money that was allocated for Kendall's slot and use it elsewhere.
yeah. God, Kendall, I could not. And then he got drafted in the 6th round the next year or something like that. I don't
So
remember
for
what
him,
team.
so for him, he played his cards right. But the
Yeah,
Cardinals obviously made a boo-boo thinking that this guy was going to sign, and then they learned the hard way that he wasn't. So, and that's an unusual situation. Like I said, usually the scouts, they've got that all hammered out ahead of time.
yeah, yeah. Fascinating,
All
fascinating.
right, all right. So let's get to the meat of the podcast today. 21 players drafted. I asked Kyle independently to take these prospects, all signed now, and put them into the top 50. Now, Kyle does his top 50 different than me, and that is as soon as a guy plays one day in the major leagues, he's off his list. So I've got guys cluttering up my list like Michael McGreevy and Gordon Graceffo and Thomas Ajacey, and Kyle doesn't deal with those guys. Once they're in the major leagues, he doesn't care about them anymore. So unless they play poorly, then he gets upset. But
Yeah,
that's neither here nor there.
yeah,
So um, what we did was we ranked, and Kyle put, as I alluded to before, 13 of these draft picks in his top 50. Being slightly more conservative, I did less than half of that. I took 6 players from this group and inserted them into my top 50 from last month. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out a way, even though our lists are different, I'm going to figure out a way to sort of meld Kyle's votes and my votes and place these guys into the Cardinal Nation official rankings for the month of July. I'm not going to move any other players around. I'll do that in August. So August will kind of be the first time again, where I'll bump some guys up or down or off. Now, some guys are obviously going to get bumped off the list based on how many come on, but that's kind of why we did this. But it's going to be fodder for us to discuss here. And let's start with where we agree. Kyle and I agree that Liam Doyle is not the number one prospect in the system yet. That's J.J. Weatherholt. And I don't think there's any debate about that. But I will ask you, Kyle, we both put Doyle ahead of Quinn Matthews. I had to think about it. If it was the 2024 Quinn Matthews, Doyle would have been third on my list. But the Quinn Matthews we're seeing this year isn't the same Quinn Matthews as we saw last year. Is that your thought process as well?
I would say that I'm just a little bit higher on Doyle, because of the velocity and the big stuff than I am on.
Even if Matthews was having another year like last year where he was leading the minor leagues in strikeouts?
I do. It would have been that way for me. Again, I'm in kind of a Cardinals adjustment mode, Brian, where I'm trying to purge myself of all of the things that I've come to appreciate and respect about the Cardinals, as the Cardinals start to purge themselves of all the things that maybe they grew an identity around. So it would have been Doyle for me, number two, even last year, and that is I promise that's not revisionist history. At least I don't think it is. Who really knows? To be honest with you, Brian.
All
Uh,
right. A
but
fair answer, fair and honest answer, and I'm cool with that.
But
Um,
that does real quick give us just one chance to talk about Quinn Matthews. There are two things that are really killing him. One is you can tell he does not trust his fastball. It is obvious, and he doesn't trust it in the zone, and because of that, he's throwing a lot of wasted fastballs at AAA. And of course, the diminished velocity. I guess part of why I wanted to bring this up, Brian, is this time last year, Quinn Matthews could hit 97 miles an hour. Now he's 91, 92, 93, coming off of shoulder fatigue issues to start the year, basically. This is dangerous. And you know what? Now that I think about it, I say that out loud. 97-mile-an-hour Quinn Matthews is probably every bit as good or as high end of a prospect as 99, 97-mile-an-hour Liam Doyle, and it probably would have been pulling at more straws than I'm leading on. But I do think that
and by the way, one has had success in the high levels of the minor leagues, and the other one hasn't yet thrown a professional pitch.
yes.
That should matter too, right?
Oh, absolutely. It should. It should under most circumstances. But as we start to see that diminished velocity and those diminished results at the highest level, I think it's worth wagering what Liam Doyle is capable of with his stuff that he has showed, uh, as far as from like a potential standpoint. It feels like one's going backwards while the excitement is kind of driving driving the car on Liam Doyle. So it is a weird balance.
All right. Let's talk about now the next two players because you and I had a little bit difference of opinion, and we're talking about minor. Kyle has Tanner Franklin, the competitive round B pick, and Ryan Mitchell, the second round pick, 2 spots apart. I also have them 2 spots apart, but I have Mitchell ahead of Franklin. You have Franklin ahead of Mitchell. Now, Mitchell, of course, high schooler, changing positions, longer window. Tanner Franklin, successful college pitcher, more polished, going to move more quickly. Why, as you looked at Franklin versus Mitchell, did you take the guy that the Cardinals took afterward, 18 picks later, 17 picks later, and rank him as a better prospect than the guy that they picked sooner?
Brian, what this came down to for me was very simple. I appreciate the body type, the explosive swing, and the loud contact line drive tool of Ryan Mitchell a great deal. I like it. I like it a lot. But I view that kid as needing quite a bit of, even though he's not as wiry as people lead on. A 6'1", 200-ish pounder. He's strong. He's physical. I just don't think he controls his body particularly well. And 18-year-olds don't. I mean, you just don't. And not unless you're playing in the NBA or something like that, or unless you're playing football physically, like you just don't control your body particularly well. I think he's going to have an adjustment there. I also think there's too much movement in his swing, which means that he's going to need a swing change. And when you're talking about a pitch to contact or a contact tool driven prep star, which is good, the Cardinals, when you're talking about I'll get to that in a second. When you're talking about a contact oriented prep star, who might need a pretty large swing overhaul, I think that lends itself to maybe some questions about how it's going to develop. The two things I will say about that is what I like about Mitchell as compared to like Josh Baez or Trey Fletcher is that the contact tool, the patience at the plate is what drives his profile. It's not power. So I think that I think that he's going to have success, and I also think he's going to have success early at the lowest levels, whether it be at the complex or Palm Beach, because of that contact tool. I just think that when he gets up to even high A, I think that's when we're going to start to see a lot of flaws. Where with Tanner Franklin, that's big stuff, and it's just big, loud stuff. And it's the reason I have so many, and I don't want to ruin it, but the reason I have so many players from the 2025 draft on my list is it's just big, loud stuff. It's pitching, it's big, loud stuff that the Cardinals have, that scouts dream on, that player development staffs all throughout baseball dream on. And the Cardinals haven't had it. They have not had this. It's guys who hit pitch to contact and might find their way into some strikeouts. And
Like I said before, Kyle, I think the Cardinals did a great job of spending their money. They got the right guys in every case. But no, seriously.
yeah,
Now, again, we're talking about guys Kyle had in the 10 to 15 range, and I have in the 15 to 20 range. Now, there's one other angle that I wanted to cover just briefly, and that is I look at where to rank the players in their position groupings. So, for example, Ryan Mitchell, outfielder, at least outfielder on paper. So I said, okay, where do I see him versus Baez? Where do I see him versus Chase Davis? And where I came down was I think Baez is a better prospect at this point. Chase Davis, to me, has been a disappointment.
mm-hmm.
And so I slotted Mitchell between the two. You still had Davis ahead of Mitchell because you're a little more aggressive on Chase Davis at this point than I am.
Brian, I don't know what I am with Chase Davis. I can't even figure out my own outlook on Chase Davis. I know I watch him, and it doesn't feel like he's far off from being a major league contributor, but he just doesn't do enough. You know,
He takes
I
walks.
can't. Yeah, he takes walks. Thank you. You know, I think there's just something that's not unlocking with him, and it's not like with a lot of other prospects that fizzle out. It's not like with Delvin Perez or, it's there's just there is a development adjustment that he needs to make with how he handles at bats. And it's not just about the walks, it's about how he handles the inside pitch. And I feel like if he could just flip, if he could learn to get aggressive with inside pitches, specifically low in the zone, if he would just hunt those, even in pitchers counts, even in hitters counts, whatever it is, if somebody just grabbed him and said, hey, look, from now on, you can't swing at stuff outside. No more swinging at stuff outside. You can only swing at stuff inside. That's it. That's all you're going to get. He's either going to hit 100 and strike out 40% of the time, or he's going to make the adjustment. And because of that, I can't.
Could we have that conversation with Nolan Gorman and Jordan Walker too? No,
Right?
never mind.
Wait, but like with it's kind of the same thing. Like if Gorman could just learn how to hit that high fastball, that would have changed his whole trajectory. That would have changed what he was capable of. And
sorry, I got you off track. I've got you.
Yeah. So that's it. I would say that part of my reason for really liking Chase Davis still is defensive oriented. I think he's low key made such huge strides defensively, specifically in center field.
Agreed. He has.
So in the back of my head, I'm not quitting him because I just think there's a small adjustment that needs to be made that is actually really large that I'm underselling, and how good he's become defensively.
All right, so we shall see about that. The next two guys the Cardinals drafted, Jack Gurevich in the third round and Cade Crossland in the fourth round. Now, again, Gurevich was picked before Crossland. You have the two 12 spots apart in your rankings. Now, Gurevich, if he's really just a first baseman, I kind of see that. But I want to hear Crossland is well positioned in your top 20, not that far from Franklin. And I'm curious what you see in him that in Cade Crossland specifically, that he's the top 20 prospect in the Cardinal system, ahead of Bryson Motts, ahead of Braden Davis, ahead of Lynn, ahead of Ducanich, ahead of some pretty good pitchers.
Yeah, so it's really simple. All of the things that I really like about Braden Davis, who I have as my
17th.
18th. Braden Davis
Oh,
is
your
my
list
18th.
changed again. I knew it's written in invisible ink.
Uh, uh, like Crossland does it louder. His changeup isn't as it doesn't have the movement profile that Braden Davis has. Kate Crossland's it's not on the same level as Braden Davis, but it works better off of his fastball. And not only when his fastball is at high velocities, which is 98, because Kate Crossland can hit 98, but even at 94, it is the angle it comes out. Now, just like with Braden Davis, almost comically, he has nearly the same mechanical issue that we talked about with Braden Davis. So it's going to take the Cardinals getting him in line. He's still going to walk players. So it's a matter of how quickly he can make the jumps that Braden Davis is starting to make. But it's just if I have Braden Davis at 18 and there's a prospect who is just like him but louder and maybe further ahead of where Braden Davis was a year ago, that's why Crossland in part goes where he's at.
Good
Again,
explanation.
sometimes with Crossland too, it's like we talk, it's not always about where they were drafted, it's about the bonus. And I think when you look at Crossland, you see how like the Cardinals gave him 100K more or whatever it was. I'd be willing to wager everything that I have that it took them uh, continuing to tack on money to get him to them in the fourth round. So
No,
I just think
go ahead.
no, I was gonna say I just think that plays into it too, more so than like where they were drafted.
Then why did they get Gurevich in the third round?
Because it's about the best bat at that spot. Now they're not drafting, but at this point, it's it's about the slot money and the potential and needing to fill a void, which is actually actionable power.
Power,
You know,
power, power.
contact
The system has no power.
contact driven power too. It's not like all or nothing power. So it was an opportunity there, and maybe you could go to Cade Crossland and say, hey, if you can maybe not sign for the next round, we'll give you another 100K. And he says, yeah, I'll do it. And maybe you go to Guracek, and he says, no, I'm not going to do it. You're going to draft me here. Then maybe that comes into it too. That's the Major League Baseball draft. That's how it works. So that plays into it. Now, Ryan Mitchell will get time at shortstop, and also Gurevich will get time out in the outfield. Those are two things that will happen in the next year, whether it just be in spring training or on the backfields. That I have that on pretty good authority. So that's look to that. It'll be interesting to see how Gurevich how he adjusts, and
Yeah,
that
if he can handle the outfield, he would be a lot more interesting to me.
yeah. So I'm waiting to see how that all works out.
All right. Now, the last player that I had, the sixth and last player on my list was fifth rounder Ethan Young, who I had right in the 40 range. You had him just in the edge of your top 30. What is it about Ethan Young that you like? Because we haven't really talked much about him.
I love that slider. Again, it's a high velocity fastball with interesting pitch characteristics that gets swing and miss, and then a secondary offering in his slider, which is again, it's probably not on the same caliber of Crossland's changeup or Doyle's splitter or probably even Tanner Franklin's cutter. Again, Franklin's cutter and slider are going to be the two things with him, how those develop in the Cardinals organization. But it is like the next tier down. It is a really great pitch. It's a strikeout pitch. And, he's pitched multi innings. We'll see if he ends up becoming a multi inning reliever, a short inning reliever, or a starter. Of course, the plan is to start him, I'm sure. But I just think, again, you look at what's after him on my list. Like Pete Hansen is not a strikeout pitcher. He doesn't have the loud stuff. He's got a changeup and an off speed offering that allow him to get some swing and miss, but he's not a strikeout pitcher. All you really have is Cade Winquest. So in my mind, I'm like, all right, if I'm going to put Cade here, Ethan Young has kind of a higher upside than Cade if he starts developing. So that's why he slots in there. I think that might end up being the steal of the draft. It's tough because okay, so I think that some of the guys at the
I'm going to write
back
that down. I'm going to write that down. Steal of. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So I think that some of the guys in the back of the draft could be like oh my god, how did this guy become a major leaguer? Or like get a taste, like Cameron Nickens, the 17th rounder, or Jalen Flores, the 11th rounder. Like those guys could find their way into the majors and be quote unquote a steal. But I think when you're talking about like the next round of Brendan Donovan, Tommy Edman, I think what we're talking about is the pitcher, Ethan Young, the guy who, the Cardinals drafted this guy in the fifth round. How did they get this guy in the fifth round? Why is he starting important games for the St. Louis Cardinals or pitching out of the bullpen?
And by the way, other than Mitchell, who got over $500,000 more than Slot to forgo his college commitment, Ethan Young, who was a college junior, got about 160 grand over Slot. And that's about 20% over. So that was a nice bonus for him. Obviously, he was a guy the Cardinals wanted, Ethan Young.
Yeah.
Now, in your bottom 15, but still in your top 50, Kyle, are seven other players. And we're talking about sixth rounder, seventh rounder, eighth rounder. Sorry, Michael DeTolo, ninth. You're not in there.
No.
Ty Van Dyke, who signed for under Slot, only other guy besides Doyle who signed for underslot, but he's a senior, so you get why. And then you hopped over Flores and picked a couple guys who received the over slot in the 10 and 11 to 20 rounds, in Caden Eshelman, the 12th rounder, and Alex Breckheimer, the 16th rounder, but then also Cameron Nickens, the 17th rounder. So what do you see kind of in these other guys? We know Graham, is a Tommy John guy. We talked a little bit about him before.
Yeah, I think, I won't get into Graham much. I just think he has big stuff. And if I was willing to be aggressive about Andrew Dukanich, I feel like I have to be aggressive about Peyton Graham. Of course, he's one setback away from almost certainly finding his way off the list, but so was Dukanich.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I look at the rest of the guys, especially the pitchers, I do think Matt Miura and Ryan Weingartner are two really interesting guys. I actually like Weingartner better than I like Miura. Weingartner being the eighth rounder out of Penn State, a shortstop, and Matt Miura being the outfielder, the sixth rounder out of Hawaii. I think Miura probably has a better chance of being a major leaguer because of what he does. He's a really great defender, a really great runner in center field, and he makes a lot of contact.
I'm sorry, but I just, I look at the Cardinals' history of drafting
Yes.
undersized, toolsy outfielders, and I think, oh my gosh, we've had so many of these guys, but maybe Mira will be different.
And it's funny because like that's why I like Ryan Weingartner in some ways because the opposite of their toolsy outfielders that are small and undersized that make contact is they've had a lot of success with the collegiate like sleeper infielder and turning them into something, even if it's just like AAA depth, like actually getting some type of return for those. So I actually like Ryan Weingartner a lot. I think he could be a sleepy major leaguer, Daniel Descalso type or something like that. We'll see how it all goes. The rest of these guys are on this list. I'm going to look at the list. Van Dyke, Eshman.
We talked about Van Dyke a little bit last year. Big big potential, but
Yeah,
reliever type, but could be something.
yeah,
But
perfectly round.
you skipped over Jalen Flores. You didn't rank him too
He
raw,
is he,
too raw.
he's 49th, Brian.
Oh,
Jalen
I beg
Flores.
your pardon. I missed it. Kyle has 14 the picks. I missed Jalen Flores. I apologize, Kyle.
It's okay. Now it's gonna just like it's gonna take a lot for me to throttle back on Jalen Flores. Uh, I am being as conservative as I am capable of being. Now, again, he was trash in 2025. He was a trash player at Texas at the plate. Now he's solid at short, kind of like Jeremy Rivas is. He's kind of built a little bit like Rivas. I don't think he's as flashy,
Rivas is
but
a very good defender.
he's solid. He's not going to make any mistakes, and he's got the range to play and stick. So I'm bullish on his ability to stay at short and be pretty good defensively at short. Now, what that means to you is whatever. The question will be, can he make enough contact for the thump in his bat to play? And I was really big on him in 2024. I wanted the Cardinals to take a chance on him in 2024, in the 2024 draft. His bonus demands were too high. So that's why he ended up going back to school and being involved in the 2025 draft. And I really like his game. I really like his swing. I just think that kind of like with Chase Davis, even though he strikes out way more and he's not as passive of a hitter as Chase Davis is, I think Jalen Flores has the ability to, if he can just make a small little adjustment, and I don't know what that adjustment is, and I'm going to put my faith in Brock Hammett and Russ Steinhorn in the group, but that has the potential to be an actual impact bat. It also has the potential to be out of the organization in a year and a half. So,
But the final 10 round guys are crapshoots. Just one last player. Tell us a little bit about Caden Eshelman and why do you like him? 12th round right hand pitcher.
again, so it's all about with all of the pitchers, it's just all about what we're getting that's new. Eshman, I love again, fastball characteristic, release characteristics. He doesn't throw particularly hard. He's flash 95, 90 to 92. But it's an interesting secondary offering. It's a starter mentality. It's you get to read and watch a little bit of him, and you're like, all right, he's a really interesting player. Like this feels more than like a 12th round pick out of obscure university. This is actually a really good pitcher that's more polished, quite frankly, than probably Ethan Young or Ty Van Dyke or even Tanner Franklin. There's just a lot more polish there. But unlike guys like Brant Thompson or the myriad of pitchers that have come through the organization like Brant Thompson, there's a fastball here that is actionable. and if it gets just a little bit more velocity on it, it might be something special. Just like with kind of like undrafted free agent from 2024, Michael Watson, who's a lefty. Um, there's interesting starter characteristics here, fastball characteristics that just need to be built on a little bit with interesting secondary stuff.
All right, there you have it. Kyle's view of Caden Eschman. Make sure you head over to the Cardinal Nation. The article won't be up here on Wednesday, but before the end of the week, I will have our new July prospect re-ranking list, and I will, like I said, try to incorporate Kyle's picks into mine, and we'll see what the list looks like. By the 30th next time around, we'll be nearing the end of July. We'll be talking about the trade deadline probably. There'll be some things done then, maybe not. We'll be close to talking about the players and pitchers of the month in the system. A number of these draft picks will have reported, got through their physicals. The player development folks made an assessment. They'll be assigned to teams. So we'll see which of these guys, and I'm anxious to see if any of these pitchers pitch this year or whether it's just going to be position players. Given the heavy focus on pitchers in the draft, I hope we see some of them, of course, hoping that nobody gets hurt. So that covered
Brian,
my butt. Did I
I have
cover my
one.
butt on that one, Kyle?
No, I loved it. I love the way you did it. That's how I handle it, Brian. Again, there's another sign I'm rubbing off on you in a poor way. All right, I'm gonna put it on you because I can't go an episode without talking about it, Brian. On Tuesday night, Eric Fetty pitched 3 innings, allowed 7 hits, allowed 6 earned runs, walked one, struck out 5, allowed 2 home runs in cores. Will he make his next start?
Am I the manager or the president of baseball ops? Because I think
Yeah,
when you asked me that last week, I told you that McGreevy should have made his starts, and it didn't happen.
yeah,
Now, the sad reality is that Fetty has almost no trade value at this point. Maybe if the Cardinals pay somebody to take him away, I still think the answer is move he and I'd love to see he and Michaelis both in the bullpen. The problem is, as we talked about before, other than McGreevy, there's nobody to plug in. Maybe you put Matz back in the rotation. I don't know. It seems like you're just at that point, changing deck chairs on the deck of the Titanic,
yeah,
um, to use a not current analogy.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
but the point is, given all the injuries, right? I mean, we
yeah,
got no Tink Hence ready, right? We got no Takoa Roby ready. We got no Robertson. We don't even have the next tier of guys ready. There's
yeah,
nobody to step in. I mean, I guess if you want to see Aaron Wilkerson make starts like we did, you know, um, late in 2023 when they picked up the lefty from Baltimore. But I just the cupboard's bare, so I don't know. I don't know what to do.
yeah. I'm with you. I think you hinted on it. I think if I'm Oliver Marmol, he is not ever making another start, and I think if I'm John Mozeliak, he can't wait to get one more start out of him.
Yeah, and it's sad, and I don't want to see, I hate to see Mosaic draw some heat because so much heat because he did a lot of good for the organization for a long time. But when you announce your departure that early, it's tough to be a lame duck. It's
Yeah,
it's tough. It's tough for a manager because a manager has to answer the questions every day, and Marmal's not a lame duck. But it's going to be interesting to see what Heim Bloom does when he's finally in charge. How much other changes he'll make or won't make. We've seen in the past, and I know we're getting off track here, but we've seen in the past other organizations, have the young manager, the unheralded manager, kind of get them through the rough times until the upturn begins, and then they bring in the Joe Madden or whoever it
yeah.
is that's going to save the day. And I don't know if the Cardinals do that. I don't know if Bloom will do that, but I don't think I don't think Joe Torre could get this team in the playoffs.
No, no way. And it's funny. It's funny. Rick Renteria was the first name that came to my mind. So when you said Joe Madden, that was perfect. But yeah, I think that you said it well. If John Mozeliak's doing one thing, he's giving Heim Bloom every opportunity to be loved by the fan base and also convert Ali Marmol haters into Ali Marmol fans. It's I feel like that's what I've seen more than anything over these last couple months.
So we'll see if the Cardinals are buyers or sellers. Right now, we'd have to say sellers, but maybe they can buy some talent. Unfortunately, as we saw 2 years ago when they brought in those 9 players, at this point, the only one in the major leagues right now is Thomas Ajacey, who was scratched from his Tuesday game, so we don't know what kind of shape he's in. And so none of the other guys they picked up 2 years ago are contributing at the major league level, which was the overall goal. So, and they don't have a Jack Flaherty to trade this time around, although you could argue Ryan Helsley has some pretty good value too. We'll just have to see what they do and who they can get in return.
Yeah, it's going to be how much if they do go full sell of the players that they'll sell. What can they get from Mats? Maybe Jojo Romero, who's been the best left-handed reliever in baseball, one of the better ones, and of course Ryan Helsley. And then whatever happens, happens.
And I hope the answer, Kyle, is they get more than salary relief.
Oh God, let's hope so.
But you know that we can't deny that's a factor. Just
Yeah,
like the Cardinals play contracts, they're gonna try to find ways to rid themselves of salary commitment, and that's you look at the empty seats and you have to understand why.
yeah, yeah. Well said, Brian.
All right. Well, with that, we will close this episode, July 23rd of Wednesday with Walton and Reis. Thank you for watching and for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye now.